What you're about to see is a good education in what's called the Overton window, which is the spectrum of debate that's allowed in polite society. And what you're going to see here is the left fringe of the Overton window. In other words, this is as anti-war as you're allowed to be in mainstream media and still be taken seriously. Now, I need you to note just how anti-war this really is, because there's always a bunch of caveats and a bunch of by-the-ways to really not be fully anti-war. Let's take a look.
Breaking news to share. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin making an unannounced visit to Afghanistan today. His stop comes as the Biden administration faces a decision on whether to withdraw troops by a May 1st deadline as required in a U.S. agreement with the Taliban. Secretary Austin meeting with the Afghan president. He says the visit was very helpful and will inform the administration's decisions on Afghanistan. And joining me right now is Washington Congressman Adam Smith, chair of the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, welcome back to the broadcast. It's good to see you. The first question is relative to this. Is it time to finish the longest war in American history? And what does this visit tell you about the likelihood of bringing troops home in a little over a month? Do you support that, sir?
Well, I think this visit tells us how important that May 1st deadline is. I support the idea that it's time to bring our troops home. By May 1st is a very unrealistic deadline. That's what, 5-6 weeks from now. We've got, I think, somewhere between 2,500 and 3,500 troops in Afghanistan. Our allies have another 6,000 to 7,000. And if we're going, they're not staying. There's no realistic way to safely pull 10,000 troops out of Afghanistan in 5 weeks.
Of course there is. You can get them out of there in a week. You can get them out of there in a week. So this is the left fringe of the Overton window in mainstream media. He says, well, I support the idea that it's time to bring our troops home. But, I mean, not this 5 weeks. You can't do it that quickly. Really? We've been there for 20 years. So when would it be okay to bring them home? Do we need to wait another year? Another 2 years? Another 4 years? By the way, he goes on to say more and give the reasons why we're there, and the reasons are not the real reasons by any stretch of the imagination. This is as far left as they let you go. By the way, that was a good question. The question from the anchor was, is it time to finish the longest war in American history? Here's the answer to that. Yes. We've been there for 20 years. The original reason for going into Afghanistan was to get Osama bin Laden. He's been dead for a long time, and he wasn't even caught in Afghanistan, he was caught in Pakistan. And by the way, the idea was, the Taliban is protecting Al-Qaeda. Well, now there's less than 100 Al-Qaeda operatives in Afghanistan, so it's just the Taliban is there. And you're never going to defeat the Taliban. They're a guerrilla army in their own country. So what are we doing? Again, listen, not to be conspiratorial, but the fact of the matter is they have trillions of dollars worth of mineral wealth in Afghanistan. They have opium. U.S. soldiers have protected the opium fields. I mean, this stuff is all on the record. We've allied with warlords who do child rape and have child sex slaves. Again, this is all on the record. So what are we doing there? It has a lot more to do with being the world's sole superpower and being an imperialist nation and having access to the trillions of dollars in mineral wealth. And in Iraq and Afghanistan, Iraq has to do with oil, Afghanistan has to do with the mineral wealth, among other things, but really it's also about the geopolitical chessboard and keeping China and Russia in check and being in what we view as a vital region to do that. So you heard it there. This is what you're always going to hear. You heard this exact same line, by the way, in 2005, 2008, 2012, 2014. Biden said in one of his DNC speeches, we're going to be out of Afghanistan by 2014. Mark my words. How'd that go? So they could always say this. They could always say this. Well, I support the idea of getting out, just not the reality of it. The idea of it is good, but 5 weeks that's a short amount of time. Is it? It seems like a really long amount of time, actually, to get 2,000-3,000 U.S. troops out of there and our allies out of there. You could get all of them out of there in a week if you actually wanted to. But no, you're always going to get this line. They know they don't have a leg to stand on, so what they do is agree with you in principle and then say, but we can't really do it because we can't really do it. Which doesn't mean anything. It's just an excuse. I agree with you, but here's why I don't agree with you. That's always been my biggest pet peeve when people do that. And this doesn't just happen in political life. It happens in real life too, where somebody be like, yeah, I agree with you, but here's why I don't agree with you. Don't say that you agree with me part if you don't fucking agree with me. Just say you don't agree with me and explain that and explain why. You don't have to do the first part, which you then immediately contradict. That's exactly what's going on here. And this is as far left as you can go on the issue of war in mainstream media. I support the idea of getting out, but this quickly? 5 weeks, bro? 5 weeks? Yeah. And I'm being too lenient by saying you could get them all out in a week. You could probably get them all out of there in 3 days. So, anyway, completely and utterly useless. Mainstream media is trash, and that's why you turn to outlets like this.